Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and welcome to Albayan Live. We are live on this Monday evening, the 13th of April 2020. I'm your host, Abu Abdurrahman, and I'm very pleased to be joined by a dear, respected brother, someone very, very beloved to me, Ustaz Muhammad Khodr. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's an honor to have you with us once again.
It's an honor to be here, helping you out here at Albayan Radio Haram in quarantine on your own.
Jazakallah khair. You put it that way. Now, we did laugh a bit at the start because the introduction was you. So,
yes. So it's a bit of a gluttony of.
How's it feel to be introduced by yourself?
Yeah, we'll just take in the moment there, Neds. We'll take it in our stride now.
Alhamdulillah. We'd like to welcome all our viewers on Facebook. You can leave us a line, drop us a line, leave us some comments there, and we will, inshallah, try to answer any queries or feedback that you may have regarding this interesting topic. Also, our brothers and sisters from HRYC Facebook page are also with us tonight watching. Welcome to you. Our topic for today is tips for high school students and parents. But before we get into that, Ustaz Muhammad, a bit about yourself for those who don't know much about you, background and...
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. I'll try and make this as brief as possible. I was born in Lebanon, spent a significant number of years in Lebanon in my childhood and in my kind of teenagehood as well, where I learnt my Arabic language and some basic Islamic studies as well. But predominantly, I've lived my life here in Australia from year 8 in high school, graduated year 12, Khodr Park High School, up the road in Bankstown.
Good old Khodr Park.
Went to university, Sydney University, and I've been working as a school teacher, like in a formal setting for this is the 13th year.
Oh, Akbar.
But before that, still involved in dawah and involved in teaching at Al-Firdaus. And during that time, stayed within the circles of knowledge within Al-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah.
Yes.
Ranging from learning from the youthful teachers at the time, like Sheikh Fayez and Sheikh Bilal Dannoun.
Yes. Up
until recently, of course, our great scholars, Sheikh Khalid, Sheikh Abu Ayman, Sheikh Zuhair, Sheikh Kamal, and Sheikh Abdul Salam back in the day. So basically you can say born and bred kind of in Australia. I spent most of my time here, but I still have, like, just today actually we're having breakfast, or late breakfast should I say.
Brunch, maybe we can call it.
Brunch, and I'm smelling like wood fire from a chimney or from some wood fire pizza next door. Like, the guy's got one of these setups in the backyard, and I'm telling my wife, like, this is giving me childhood memories of, like, the daya, believe it or not. Here I am, like, verging on 40 years old, and it's bringing back memories. And I actually sat there and started reminiscing, and she's like, what was that like? Like, what's it like? And I started explaining it to her, what the daya was like back then. Like, I'm sure if I went there today, so I've got those...
Talking in the 80s, aren't you?
Well, yeah, like, I was born 81, so I would have spent my childhood there in, like, late 80s, after the war, of course, and whatnot. So definitely got a lot of roots, cultural roots. So I might seem like I'm born and bred typical Aussie, but, like, a significant portion of my childhood was developed in Lebanon. So here I am now. You try and stay involved in the dawah as much as you can. When you're bilingual, it helps.
Yes, it does.
You kind of find yourself serving the deen and serving the language by translating, and that in and of itself is a form of da'wah, And I still remember, the brothers, the A'ajim, how grateful they were to kind of, through myself and through, Brother Muhammad al-Mashloush and Brother Abu Jamal Kiki and all the others who have been translating for a long time for, within the Rabita. They really appreciate the translation of all this knowledge coming into the English language, and then you get a knack for it. You get invited. You find yourself in that scene, and when you have any knowledge, you got to contribute. You don't necessarily have to be a scholar or an expert,
When was the first time you actually translated?
Man, I'd have to say maybe a conference, maybe at a camp, for the Rabita, for going back years ago. I've already exposed my age, so you can think how far back we're talking here. So, yeah, and...
You can be happy because I'm older than you.
Alhamdulillah. But now Abdurrahman's in the other room and he's even younger. He's exposing our age.
That's right.
Ameen.
Now, we were speaking before we got on air how you just completed some more study recently. A year or two ago, you done your Masters in Arabic. Is that right?
Look, I got to confirm two things and deny. I got to confirm one thing and deny one thing. I love studying. Right.
Alhamdulillah.
I love the university scene. I loved my time at Sydney University. Also being involved in SUMSA. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them and bless all the...
SUMSA is like the student body, is it?
Muslim Student Association. Yes. Yeah, Muslim Student Organisation that are available on campus. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all those MSAs and the hard work that they're doing. They probably definitely got a hit at the moment with the whole quarantine thing. And I still remember the beautiful brothers that I met at the time. Ahmad Malas from UTSMS and so on. Anyway, so I've forgotten the point. What did you just ask?
I was asking you studied recently, you completed the
degree. I loved my time at Sydney Uni, and then I studied online at the University of New England, where I did my teaching degree, graduate diploma of education, and then I did Master of Arts Classical Arabic through Charles Sturt University at ISRA. Now, the fact is I love studying, but the other point is that don't ask me to recall everything I've studied. Can I remember everything? I don't know how many students can. If they can, mate, well done to them. But I have recently completed, that was the last thing I studied, the Master of Art in Classical Arabic. And would I go again? Absolutely. And now, unfortunately, I didn't choose like the thesis component when I did that Master of Classical Arabic, so I can't jump straight into a PhD. You kind of have to be trained to write a thesis, how you research, how you write the paper, how do you make it like on the academic standard, acceptable minimum academic standard and whatnot, before they can let you loose on a PhD. And the PhD work, if it's going to be research based, there's like a process that you have to go to. So I'm kind of like, I'm on kind of like on standby. I'm waiting, like, when's a good time? When work isn't so demanding, the age of the kids, my responsibilities, my work with Al Firdaus. How can I kind of fit all of that? And I'm trying to also accelerate at work as a professional. And there are also like criterias and accreditation levels you can move up as a teacher in New South Wales.
So currently you're a teacher at a high school. You're teaching high school students.
Yes.
And you're teaching Islamic studies, Quran, and other topics as well.
In the past, in my position, I've taught Quran and Islamic studies and PDHPE and IT and business studies and commerce. I'm business studies commerce trained. That was my first degree at Sydney Uni. And when I did a graduate diploma, it was my secondary studies units was related to commerce and business studies. But considering the knowledge that I accrued when I was in Lebanon in those teenage years in the private Islamic school, and then I followed it up with that Master of Arts Classical Arabic. I'm currently the subject coordinator for languages, on really Arabic.
Yes.
At my current employment. So at the moment, it's just Arabic in high school, in senior school.
Now, before we get into specific advice regarding students and parents, how have you found the last few months with the COVID-19 and the ever-changing situations you are facing as a teacher and as a parent as well?
Look, definitely, it's put a spanner in the works for everybody. It's just, in the very mild way, it's disrupted so much of what happens on a day-to-day routine. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing. in some parts, yes, if you've lost your job and there's no more business coming in, it's definitely a bad thing. Wallahu alam, like as we perceive it. Some people haven't been affected really much, but it's definitely a big disruption for so many people's everyday routine lifestyles, and in routine in a way where the disruption is disrupted some people's lives in ways they've never thought were possible. Like, apart from a war, la samahallah, what would put a halt to the entire world like COVID-19 has? What, apart from a war? You know what I mean? And inshallah, we never see a war anytime soon. But that's actually what it's done. It's disrupted so much of our daily lives, from something as simple as getting a haircut, you know, to hanging out with family, you know.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, in that setting, a lot of things have been affected. So, I mean, where do we start? The kids aren't going to school, so they're staying home. So now, instead of assuming that kids are going to be at home from the school from 8 to 4, they're at home every day. So the usual routine that mum has at home about the work that she does, when she cooks, when she cleans, when she does whatever she does as a mother does at home, now she's also got the kids in her face 24/7. School time, non-school time, the kids are there. The kids are used to being at school, being occupied. Their learning was facilitated for them, right? Their time was managed for them.
Yes.
There were tools like bells. There were tools like, teachers reminding them, sharing some of that responsibility, taking on some of that responsibility. Now, like, responsibility has absolutely been dumped on the kids. And now we know from our own kids, some kids can take responsibilities, some kids can't take any responsibility, whatsoever. We're not just talking about high school kids, junior school kids as well. I mean, some kids are too little to take on any responsibility. So that makes it very difficult for parents to actually sit there and make sure that every part of their work is supervised and done correctly. Whereas, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them, you have some really switched on high school students who've taken this in their stride, and basically they've gone really akhnidal. Some of these kids, from my personal experience, have switched from high school student to university student mode. Like, so often I have a class of stage 5 students, stage 5, that's year 9 and 10. And I'm always reminding them and reiterating to them that you're in a situation very similar to start studying online at university or through a correspondence or long distance, right? And you need to have that commitment. You need to have that independence in learning on your own and having that responsibility. And some of these kids have taken it on board, and they've just ran with it, you know. And if you give them an exam tomorrow, they will ace it just like as if they were in class. But unfortunately, and not all kids are like that, and not all kids handle responsibility very well. Most kids struggle with keeping their room clean, let alone being thrown in the deep end. Listen, your future career or the future of your education lies in your hands now. Make sure you're finishing the work. The teacher's not at home to hold your hand. Your parents are busy. Your parents, your mum, your dad are too busy trying to earn an income to sustain this household. You got to learn on your own. So some kids are doing it well, some kids aren't. And also, some parents are now forced to delve into this internet connectivity app technology world that they maybe took for granted before. And they kind of rely on the kids. They need it part-time. They need it. Sometimes they don't need it. They need it spontaneously, sometimes to complete an assignment or whatever. They need access to the home computer, and they kind of share it. But now in every single one of the children, Allahumma barik, you got 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 kids. Each one of them needs a device to be online to go to school.
Yes.
That's a lot of pressure on the family budget, on the family internet. You've had previous episodes where, like, the internet's now shot wherever you are. You're not going to get the same speed. And then there's the solution with 5G, and then there's all the conspiracy theories you've heard about 5G and the dangers. And yet, with all this in mind, tomorrow is here. It's another day, and you just got to keep pedaling.
Gotta adapt.
You know, you got to just make do. You know what I mean? And there are kids, for example, who have not attended one single day of learning online for one reason or another. It could be because they think that they chose not to take it seriously. Some because they don't have access to a device. Some because they can't produce the setup at home. One reason or another. You know, some parents are aware of this. Some parents aren't. And then sometimes even trying to contact, like, you're not going to go and knock on a student's door and say, hey, we need to make sure you're all set up when you've got 1,000+ kids at the school.
Yes.
And so sometimes contacting parents is a little bit difficult. So it's a testing time for everybody. And it's disrupted the usual flow. And it's not like one thing at a time. It's not like there's a breakdown of one or two. It's almost like everything. So many things have taken a hit all at once. So, businesses have taken a hit. Schools have taken a hit. Homes have taken a hit. Everybody is trying their best to see what they can do within the law to just keep going and to make the most of the current situation that they're in. And it's great that everyone keeps looking at the updates with regards to laws and whatnot. On one hand, to be safe and to be responsible, and on the other hand, also to avoid being fined. You know, so Masjid al-Azhar is another example of a heartbroken masjid who's had to close their doors. There's no salah. You know, driving past the masjid, seeing that the car park is barricaded, you know, to suggest, and the lights are out, and even driving through Belmont at this time, and to see so many shops closed, you think, man, you know, it's really sad. It's sad, but I don't want to give everyone the impression that it's doom and gloom.
You have to be
positive.
positive.
It's not doom and gloom. You have to be positive. And if I might add to this, actually, like, if we're going to look at it in a positive light, instead of a time to be panicking, it's a time to be creative.
100%. It's
a time to be positive and be creative. Like, you have to think the human being is an instinctive creature. He's a creature of survival. You know what I mean? And if you want to know anything about survival, go to the third world. You know, what are we surviving? Like, the fact that we can't go out and do our things and daily routine. There are people overseas who just want to survive life itself. The only thing they have for free is air. You know, so be creative in how you exist today in the current circumstances, in the current climate. And even show leadership. Show leadership with your peers, show leadership within your family, show leadership within your circle of friends, whoever you're in contact with, especially if you're very active on social media. Show leadership in a positive way. Think of some way to be positive, to lift the spirits of people, and be creative in a way where you show people, you show others healthy lifestyle choices, effective decisions, you know, being productive during this time. So, you know what, it's actually, once you come out of this mindset, you think, you know what, it's actually not so bad. It's bad, but it's not like, you know, it's not the end of the world. And so, yani, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards those who've already done that. Yep. Yani, you see on one hand, people like the shelves are empty. We keep mentioning toilet paper and all the long life stuff that's, vanished off the shelves in the supermarkets. And then we see people handing out toilet paper. You know what I mean? Handing out essentials. Giving up the essentials they bought for themselves to give to their parents or to others that they know are in need. You know what I mean? Like, that's snapping out of this mindset and thinking, you know what? I have to think about other people. I have to think about my priorities. I have to be positive and think, like, how can I make this current situation better for others? And so you find yourself, whether you're a mother, whether you're a student or a business owner or a member of society, you find yourself having to be someone you've never been before. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing, like, you know, I need to go hoard because my family needs to survive Armageddon. You know, you think, how can I still benefit people? And you find the Mashaykh, Jazahumullah Khairan, you find services like Albayan, broadcasting online. You can't come to the masjid, we'll come to you. So on and so forth. Examples like that. So really, you have to throw out the rule book and think of new ways to stay positive, to stay socially connected, as you've had shows on like episodes before about this issue. And really, for the time being, Akh Nidal, let's face it, we have to plan like the quarantine and staying at home is here to stay for a while. So let's not have this like extremely temporary mentality where it's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen tomorrow. We're going to be able to go out tomorrow. Just plan for now, for at least I don't know how many more months, that this is the status quo for now and it's going to stay. So make the most of it and be positive and productive.
Excellent. Barakallah Fik. Now, many parents are working from home and teaching their children. Now, you're a teacher who's teaching from home, and at the same time you have many kids, may Allah bless them, and teaching them. How have you balanced the two?
طيب. To be honest, Akhi Nidal, the current makeup at home for me is I have 2 of my children are in high school and 2 of my children are in primary school. Alhamdulillah, I was able to set each one up with their own device. I have my son and daughter each have a laptop, and my youngest son and daughter in junior school, they have iPads. My son's always complaining to me, by the way, that his laptop's shot and it's old and it needs to be replaced. He makes sure he reminds me every single day that he needs a new one, right? So I don't necessarily claim to have the latest and fastest technology. They're all complaining about the internet. That's the situation.
The whole of Australia is complaining about the internet.
Absolutely. And then when you have like an old laptop on top of that, a very slow one, it's slow. You understand, Nidal? Like it's a very slow, it's frustrating laptop and it's very slow. That's the message I get from my son every day.
My kids almost started the protest at home over an old laptop.
Yeah. So one of the benefits for me is I can actually go in and check my son's attendance because he's at the same school. Yes. And so if any attendance is missing, it might be because it's PE and it's a practical lesson. So I might kind of let him off, but the school executives might send a message saying, by the way, first 2 periods or last 2 periods or whatever, it's a sports session. So they're not actually meant to be online, With the little ones, I necessarily had to break up their time, and because I can't be readily available for them on hand spontaneously, I made it a rule that they can watch TV in the meantime with the TV muted or the volume down, because there's only so many things you can do at once. And my belief is that even though schooling is like from 8 to 4, if you have to deal with a child after 4 because you just have to manage everything in time, so be it. The current setup where my kids are at, the same school that I teach at, Unity Grammar, they're in class every period. They have to sit. We use Microsoft Teams, and they have to sit, and the roll is called for every single period from start to finish. And on the teacher's end, our instructions from the head of senior school is that you need to be available online throughout that entire 50 minutes. If you give them work to go and come back, or you want to be like facilitating the learning throughout that 50 minute, that's up to you, but you need to be available for the student for that entire 50 minutes. So the high school kids, Laith in year 7 and Minna in year 9, they actually have to sit one lesson at a time. And we've discussed in the meeting minutes that maybe if students are let off 5 minutes before that lesson ends, to go freshen up, go to the toilet, because they're literally sitting at the table.
Yes, which isn't the best.
That's right. So if they're going to sit one lesson after another, because between recess and lunch is 3 sessions, that's 150 minutes. They're going to be sitting there. So the school needs to make arrangements, home needs to make arrangements, parents need to kind of making arrangements. Everyone has to work together because it's something new for everybody. And everybody works off like feedback. So necessarily, while Minna and Laith, who are in high school, have to sit in every single session, I can check their attendance to make sure that they've attended class, or when I'm not on class, I can just pop in to make sure that screen is showing what it should be showing, that doors aren't closed, that I have visual access to the screen at any point in time to see what they're seeing.
Very important.
If they're off the screen, why are you not on the screen? Like, even if, whether they've got a valid reason or not, at least they're asked. That they know that every time they're not on the computer, they're going to be asked, why are you not on the computer? But the little ones, they might come to me for an issue, and I might quickly have an answer for them, tell them to come back, give me a bit more time. Or once I finish what I'm doing, I might go to them, give them more instructions, and they can do it and come back. But at the same time, it also helps when the teacher's instructions, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them, when the teacher's instructions are clear for the age of the student and they know what they're supposed to do. And sometimes when they're not, and the teachers, it's very difficult for them to explain online to like a student in year 3. Awais for me is in year 3 and Zanira's in year 6. You know, it's difficult for them to kind of explain to a year 3 student. So the teacher might say, ask mum or ask dad or somebody. And that doesn't mean like spontaneously. So the younger ones have kind of figured that like dad's busy now or mum's busy now, but then it's the parents' responsibility that to chase that up and know, actually, you know, that child asked me, he left me alone, but he did ask me, I need to go follow that up, because the child would have forgotten or would have kind of been distracted by something else. So then you have to kind of make a note somewhere or try and remember that I need to call that child back and say, what happened with this task? Did you submit it? What was the solution? Let me see how you solved it. Did you send it? You know, so I mean that may be a very unique situation to me, but just to give the listeners and the viewers an idea of some of the things that are happening in the households. It's not black and white. It's not regimented. It's not military style. Like, yes, I've done the big bad thing of during school, my kids are watching TV because you just can't do everything at once, you know. And yes, sometimes my kids are off the screen, and while you're off the screen, and I got to remind them to go back, and they have to, like, he will explain to me, and he'll know that he better give me a good reason, you know. So being held up, you know. So I hope that helps. Some parents kind of understand what happens in some households.
Yes, with a lot of the news coming out now that to at least week 6 of term 2, it's going to be like this. And from what I know, I'm surprised that your school has basically rolled out the online learning and the roll call, because where my kids go, they're in the process of doing it, and they said by term 2, we basically, you know, you have to watch every class and attend and roll call, and we're more stringent, as they say. What I would like to discuss in more detail is the senior students. You mentioned, Allah bless them, you have 2 children in high school.
No.
I have 3 in high school. And especially towards those approaching the HSC, whether they're in year 10, 11 or 12, a bit more serious studies. With the younger kids, sometimes you may be able to get away with it here and there.
Yeah.
I found the teachers are communicating quite well with the parents, from my experience anyway. How can we advise the elderly students in terms of staying motivated, being organised, and so on and so forth? And here we go. Here it is. What is it, Ustaz Muhammad?
The chai latte is coming.
Chai latte.
Toby's estate.
Yes. Toby's estate. You can't. I'm more of a piccolo with an extra shot.
This is from 1822?
1822, yes.
Jazakallah khair, Mr. Krayyam.
That's right. May Allah reward him, yes.
Mama barik.
We've given him a few shout outs. I don't know if he even knows that we have.
MashaAllah. I don't know if he needs any more publicity. Allah
he's getting a lot.
He's burning up Facebook. Tabarakallah.
Yeah, Sheikh Jamil gave him a few shout outs last time.
MashaAllah.
Drinking the coffee.
Time and time again, his creativity and ingenuity in the business field with food and with businesses and cafes. Tabarakallah. He deserves all the success he's achieving.
Have I ever told you that we used to give khutbah at one of his restaurants, Volcanoes, back in the day? We're in Bankstown, there was a hall we used to hire, and it was getting renovated.
Hall, yes.
It was getting renovated, and there was the Volcanoes restaurant there across the road. So for a few weeks, we actually gave khutbah there.
Wow.
It became a bit of a problem when the brothers were placing their orders for lunch before the khutbah. And the chefs were cooking as we're talking. So you can only imagine that. Someone in 2 minds and 2 worlds. Thinking about what the sheikh is saying, and then also looking at the chef cooking his steak for him, getting it ready.
It's a good one.
Those were the days, yeah.
Smelling the steak during the khutbah.
Yes, so for high school students, keeping them motivated, keeping them organised, what would you advise them, since that's who you mainly teach at school and you have children at home?
Hello, look, definitely, Akhi Nidal, with regards to the senior school kids during this time, to begin with, motivation is an issue full stop for any student, right? And it's made easier, and it's made more enjoyable, and it's more accessible and more productive, hopefully, with the facilitation of a teacher there. So, I mean, we all know that teachers sometimes have an amazing ability to make you enjoy even the most dreadful subject. When they facilitate and break down the learning, and they process it for you in a way, facilitate it for you in a way that makes it easy, it breaks it down for you, even the most difficult and daunting stuff, makes it accessible and easy for the kids to understand, and sometimes we love a subject all because of a teacher. But in any case, motivation, even in the presence of a teacher, is a big deal is a big deal in the first place, before and after quarantine. And if we look at education for a child from kindergarten all the way to year 12, necessarily the independence becomes exponential. So a student in kindergarten is very dependent, and then once you get to year 12, they should be the most independent of all the 13 years of education. And if we look at that graph, it should show us that they're very independent, to the point where if we continue after school to university, like when you get to university, it's the epitome of being an independent learner. Like, nobody takes their kids to university, for example. If they're lucky, they might get dropped off. But no one walks them into university and holds their hand and asks them, oh, what assignments do you have? Show me your timetable and whatnot. Whereas some of that still exists in year 12, a diligent parent following up on their child's education. And even at the university level, that independence continues. Like, the further you study, you got your undergraduate degree and then the postgraduate degree. And postgraduate degree is sometimes it's purely voluntary. Like an undergraduate degree, for example, you need it for a particular industry, let's say teaching. You need to study teaching before you can be qualified. But you don't have to do any postgraduate studies. Like postgraduate, if we were to consider that undergraduate studies were voluntary, postgraduate studies even more voluntary. And then to go and do a master's or do a PhD, that's like, some people think it's so voluntary, you're mad, to do that. Why would you do that to yourself? And so if we look at a PhD, like, if you are not motivated and you're not committed and you've got this unbelievable desire to finish, it won't be done, So, and that's a very big extreme from the beginning of your learning career in kindergarten all the way up to if you decide to, go into further and further study at university. But even in year 12, there needs to be a minimum level of motivation. Otherwise, you won't finish. So, and there's, Akhi Nidal, the truth of the matter is there's only so much you can do for a student. Now, look, I'm going to say it to you black and white here. Some schools of thought say that the complete responsibility is on a teacher to create the learning environment for the student. On the other hand, they'll say, no, most of the responsibility is on the student. The teacher is merely a facilitator, right? And then you have kind of an in-between, a perfect in-between, and God bless whoever can achieve that in-between. I'm a big proponent of the idea that teacher's a facilitator, right? But there's a lot of responsibility on the student to make sure they get it right.
So we used to always hear growing up, a student will learn whatever he wants to if he's dedicated. Doesn't matter which school he goes to.
No. Hell, of course, we don't want to abuse that.
Yeah.
We don't want to absolve the teacher.
I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying we used to hear it a lot, especially when a kid goes to a school which has got a bad reputation. Our parents, our elders will always say, if he wants to learn, he'll learn.
Right. Definitely. Because like we said, I mean, rain, hail or shine, quarantine or no quarantine, there are kids that are just burning up their studies and their classwork and homework. And at any point in time, you throw an assessment task at them, they'll rip it to shreds. They don't need any excuse to fall behind, or they just, in any situation, they'll accelerate and they'll do well. But not everybody's like that. And there are students who will only learn if you are there, basically breathing down their neck, standing on top of them, feeding them with a silver spoon. There's a whole range of kids, right? We don't want to absolve teachers of responsibility, but students need, especially in the senior years, they need to have a minimum level of motivation and commitment to their own studies, to their own betterment, to their own education, to their own knowledge, to their own future. Yani, as hard as a teacher can, as hard as a teacher tries, there's only so much they can do to push the student to perform. Yani, sometimes that's why there's some, you can't doubt there are some educational institutions that have a minimum requirement even about motivation. If you don't want to be here, don't come back. If you don't want to be here, don't come back. If you have a grilling question for a teacher, they must deliver. If you really need help, a specific help, the teacher will do whatever they can in their own time even to help you. But if you don't even want to be here, and you being late means you don't want to be here on time, so you don't have to come back. Like, they're kind of that strict and that military about student responsibility. But of course, these current circumstances don't make things easier. So if you're kind of motivated when you come to school and you love the environment and you love that kind of time management and all the facilitation and it works for you, you've just been deprived of that. So that kind of makes, for those kind of students, it kind of makes it a little bit trickier, and a lot of the kids are like that. So as long as they have a caring teacher that's always reminding them, supporting them, keeping them on their toes, they do well. They like being mentored. They like being led. They like that facilitation from the teacher that they trust and love, and that makes them enjoy the subject. When that's taken away, they feel disheartened. They feel like they've lost their motivation. So in this case, if they get their drive and motivation from regular contact with the teacher, and they know that, then they should seek that. They should play their part and seek that motivation, seek that communication. And I've even heard some in the education sphere recommend to their teachers, when you're teaching them, switch your cameras on, right? Switch your camera on so the students can see you and have that human connection, because it's important. They want to know, hey, that's Mr. Ayubi. Oh, look, that's Mr. Khodr. Oh, we missed you. I haven't seen you. They used to see you every day, at least in the playground, whatever. And now they don't see anybody. So at least to see you, it's a good bonding. It's good rapport, good for rapport. So if that helps, do it. And at the same time, unfortunately, for some parents, maybe they don't feel confident with this, they feel awkward about it, or maybe they feel like insecure, but perhaps the parents are going to play this role now. They're going to play the role of the motivator. They may not have the academic rapport with their children, maybe they've never finished school, maybe they've never been to be academic or scholarly, and now they're encouraging their kids to keep going. So, some parents may not have that academic, intellectual credibility with their children because they've never been a source of learning or motivation or study or being this bright student doing well at school. But someone has to motivate these kids, and if you're at home, you can't say, well, I'm not going to be doing it, no one's going to do it. So if the kids need that, and sometimes it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't mean that the parent has to know everything about everything and win over the child from their incredible knowledge about every subject.
An all-rounder.
No parent is like that. And if there are, mashallah, Allahumma barik, that household is very lucky. But sometimes just a question, just a follow-up, just attention, just to show, look, I care about your progress, and it's very important for you to continue your knowledge. And this is a big year for you. And I've interacted with kids who it's obvious that, for example, their mothers or their fathers aren't intellectual. They're not academics. They haven't gone and finished university degree upon degree, but
they're there
for them, and the child wants to finish because their mother wants them to. Black and white. I want you to finish يا أمي الله يرضى عليك خلص والله يرضى عليك وبدي أفرح فيك وبس تتخرج يا حبيبي وبس. You don't have to get a university. I just want you to. Okay, I'm doing it for my mum. She probably doesn't know half of what I'm doing. She had no idea what I'm doing, and she probably couldn't help me get one extra mark, but she was always there. And as far as the kids are concerned, doing my head in, because she wanted me to finish. I'm happy to finish just for mum's sake or just for dad's sake, so I can make them proud. You know, and really, I mean, Nidal, this is a very sensitive point as well, because even in my line of work as also well-being coordinator, there has to sometimes, the ugly side of it is reprimand kids who do the wrong thing. Sometimes you tell them, listen, it's not always about the school. It's not always about the rules. You're going to break your mum's heart. Like, this is going to go home and you're going to break your mum's heart. Whether I let you off or discipline you or not. You know what I mean? Your mum's going to be upset. And even if I let you off, if you go home and you copper badly from your parents, you know, you get told off or you disappoint your mum and dad, I can't help you there. You know what I mean? Like, and you've just shot yourself in the foot, or you're damaging your own relationship with your parents, and it's not worth it.
Got a special salam for you from the Sheikh Abu Hamza, Zuhair Hassan Isa.
أهلا وسهلا. على راسي.
سلامي للأخ محمد.
على راسي. أهلا وسهلا. The Imam of Masjid Bilma, mate.
So your Sheikh is basically watching you. That's pretty good, Muhammad.
You put me on the spot now. I'm on the spotlight.
Yeah, so he conveys his salam. Allah bless him and bless you. So this is very important here. Like, you mentioned the word discipline. How can a parent, like, in disciplining his child in this environment now, should they be stern, relax a bit, because it is changing every day? You know, what approach should they take?
Look, it's very important.
We're talking about high school students here. We're not speaking about the younger children here.
And look, my advice to you, Akhi Nidal, and the listeners, is that as much as possible, try and keep the status quo. So, okay, some things are missing from our life. Some things have been whacked out of routine. Okay, but it doesn't mean everything has to turn into chaos. Try and keep as many of these rules as possible, and make, at least mentally, make exceptions mentally. So you're not saying that everything's changed now and matters are like haphazard now and no more rules. No, keep the rules. Like even in the case of assessments due, there's an assessment due in today. Okay, the default is that it's still due. But if you've got circumstances where you like an extension, I'm happy to discuss it with you as an exemption, as an exception to the rule. But as far as we're concerned, everything is running according to schedule as much as possible. Hello, what causes panic is when people don't have the routine anymore. The unknown causes panic. You know, when something's unfamiliar, it causes panic, worry. So as much as you can, if you can keep things as they've always been, and then on a case-by-case basis, give kind of exceptions or give, adaptations, I think that would help. Now, in terms of disciplining children in this situation, look, like we said earlier, this is a new territory for everybody. You know, so everybody's kind of learning, even the doctors themselves, as Dr. Ma mentioned.
Yes.
Even like in the medical field as well, in the medical scene as well, they're still learning every day as it comes. And even like the government announcements, as soon as they become aware of something, they're even adapting. When it comes to schooling as well, like as you mentioned, some schools have hit the floor running even before the break. Some of them are preparing now. Some for a long time still don't know what to do. You know, so this has been testing for everybody. And so some flexibility naturally would be wise. Some flexibility would be wise where, وَابْتَغِي بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ سَبِيلًا. So if you can,
middle path, yeah.
Yeah, a middle path as much as possible. You might not get a 100%, but you can't be absolutely strict and you can't completely let go of all the rules.
Yeah, that's a good approach. Now, what about now heading into term 2, and most of the schools are going to roll out a more full-on, more stringent system where the student has to be physically present in front of the screen. And we've discussed with our dear brother Nazir about, postures and how long you should sit and not sit and how you should sit and so on and so forth. Other schools taking into consideration their physical well-being as long as they're with their mental well-being as well?
Look, what I find is that the next best thing to, let's say let's call it chaos now, right? For a lot of people in so many ways. The best thing happening in all of this chaos is that communication and everybody is all ears for new information. So I assure any parent who wants to communicate anything to the schools, the school is like on high alert and high standby getting any information, because this information is then considered feedback to help improve the process.
Yeah.
Like even now, if we're broadcasting this session live, someone needs to tell us the audio is not on. For example, if we don't get that information, here we are, we've been on air for how long, like 40 minutes now, or the whole time there's no audio, for example. In a similar situation, when this school is sending out and trying to educate these students and disseminating this information, it wants to know, is it working? Is it effective? Is it productive? Is it helpful? So even in the institution that I teach from, on a regular basis, we're seeking feedback from staff, we're seeking feedback from parents. We want to know what's working, what's not, what needs to be repaired, what can be adjusted. So at any point in time, the best thing you can do is communicate. And it's a learning curve for everybody. So on a constant, regular basis, even for me, for example, one of the feedback I got from my students is that one particular teacher, their audio is amazing compared to mine. Their setup is amazing. It's the best out of everybody. So I gave them a call. And I said, what are you doing that I can do, right, to make sure that I have the same feedback from my students about how they can hear me and how I'm delivering my classes? So all this information is beneficial for everybody. And as long as that communication is happening, it's a good thing. On the other hand, if no communication is happening at all, then the students aren't learning, the teachers and the school isn't developing, right? And they're in a rut, or they're in an unproductive place. It's not improving, and that's not useful and beneficial for anyone.
One of the sisters actually sent us a message that she's having problems with the iPhone app and with listening. Now, anyone who's having problems with their app, the best thing to do is actually to reset your phone or to delete the app and reinstall it. If you still have problems, you can listen through TuneIn, the TuneIn app, which is very good. But what we do suggest, and this is a plug for the Wi-Fi radio over here, is to actually purchase the Wi-Fi radio Ustaz Muhammad's holding up. That you connect it to the Wi-Fi and you have Albayan radio exclusively 24/7 in your house, as long as you have good internet, and it doesn't require much internet for you to be able to play it. So I thank the sister for sharing her information, and she says Jazakallah khair for sharing info on this topic. Wa iyaki, barakallah fiki for your comment, and we apologize for the app problem. We do realize that sometimes people are having problems with the older app, which is inshallah there'll be an update, we hope, before Ramadan begins, which will eliminate that problem bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Continuing, Ustaz Muhammad, with this discussion, there is many ways we can take the discussion. We've discussed with the younger children. That's why I really don't want to talk too much about it. We've discussed maximizing online learning and so on and so forth from many perspectives. What other information would you like to share with parents or even high school students that you feel is key for them to process and to take into term 2?
Look, what I would say was that the end of term 1, when everybody had to go into like quarantine or stay at home, it caught everyone off by surprise. And it caught everybody off guard, it caught everybody by surprise. So we were fortunate enough at Unity Grammar to kind of already have something in place. So we were forced to hit the ground running with whatever setup we had. Now, we're not caught off so many other institutions by surprise. Nobody thought it was going to hit that soon.
Yes.
So alhamdulillah, the advantage is, the benefit at least, is that with these 2 weeks holidays, you can imagine there's a lot of behind the scenes work now and groundwork to be ready, because it's very, very likely, and it's imminent, that term 2 is going to start online, right? Schools aren't going to open yet. Everyone's going to be happening, or schooling is going to be happening predominantly online. Unless, of course, the rule still stipulates that if you're an essential worker and you need to send your kids to school, then you can send them to school. And maybe the schools are going to have, some schools are having a skeleton staff running the show, a third, I think, or half, or all these different arrangements about making sure that there's enough staff to run the school for those kids who have to be sent to school, so on and so forth. So like we said, if we're going to imagine and plan for now that the quarantine and the stay home policy is here to stay, we need to start thinking that way. So even if it's as simple as figuring out where everybody is going to sit at home,
Yes.
Which one's everybody's corner, right? And for the time being, setting up. See, as a father, Nidal, you already know that sometimes if you plan something with your children and they know what to expect, you avoid a lot of conflicts that arise from spontaneous matters. So like, okay, everyone's got to be online now. Grab a device, let's go online. Then you're going to have siblings quarreling and fighting over the one device or the 3 or 4 or whatever, and there's not enough for everybody. But if you plan ahead that, okay, look, we've only got 4 devices, there's 5 of us, right? This is how we're going to plan it out. Khalas, once everybody knows there's only 3 devices, there's 5 of us. Mum's work is very important. Dad's work is very important. They're going to use it at this time and that time. You can't access it during this time. We're going to let the school know. You can't access it during this time. The school should know. We'll tell the school you can't go online for the first half of the day. Any work you have, they'll email it to you. You'll send it in the second half. Or you'll finish your work after school finishes, right? Because there's only one device in the household. And as Brother Jamal, I think what he mentioned when he was at Albayan, he said that anything you can download beforehand.
Prepare the night before.
Download it beforehand.
If you have to print it as well, the night before.
Absolutely. And now, because our homes are now our workplaces, and because now our homes are basically our schools.
Playground, kitchen.
That's right. And the backyard's our playground. We need to remember a number of things, right? We need to keep a number of things in mind. Every microphone, unless you've got a specialized microphone like the one in the studio, every microphone is sensitive and picks up any noise in the house. So if you're even...
They're all directional mics, in other words. Like these are one directional mic. You speak into it, it picks up the sounds optimal. But the phone mics, the tablets, the laptops, they pick up everything around it.
That's right. So if you're setting up in the bedroom and you've got an ensuite, they're going to hear the flush of the toilet and then someone washing at the sink,
Yes.
And they're going to hear the microwave beep. They're going to hear the washing machine. They're going to hear the pots and pans in the kitchen. So anybody who's preparing for themselves a meal, or decide you want to clean the house, or you want to have a loud conversation with your friend on the phone, or whatever the issue is, the TV, the video games, everybody in the house is very likely it's going to be picked up by their microphone, so you need to be aware of that. I was unfortunate to be running a class, and alhamdulillah, the neighbor decided to invest in a contractor to come and cut the cement.
Oh no, that's loud.
That thing was so loud, it was like a chainsaw on steroids. Cutting through cement. Like right now, you can't help these things, right? Because now all of a sudden this dining room now is a classroom. And also when it comes to the internet, like there's a huge strain on the internet at the moment. Everybody's complaining. So especially during times when your household needs the internet, don't go online. Don't browse if you don't have to. Don't play your video games that require the internet. Put less strain on the internet that's being used at the moment for serious learning or for work. Also, when it comes to nerves, everyone's on wit's end, and the most stressed, the mum and dad at home. Usually predominantly mum, right? So we need to be aware of those, like just emotionally and mentally, just be aware of that everyone's going through an unprecedented time. It's putting real stress that you don't understand. Just your approach and your choice of words, and sometimes a bit of help, would go a long way. I saw a nice picture message. I wouldn't quote the actual language used, but it was inside a cupboard. It said, "You're not hungry. You're just bored."
That's right.
So just close the pantry, and stop looking for ways to just use up your time. So also we need to look at eating habits during this time. Don't eat for the sake of it, and don't put additional pressure, especially if the income has been affected.
Yes.
Don't put additional pressure on the family budget by just eating because you're bored. You just constantly want to eat, and if there's a number of people in the household and everybody wants a snack every hour, you're going to deplete the pantry over nothing, and you're not going to feel full. So you got to factor that in as well.
A lot of these snacks actually make you hungrier.
Well, there you go. And also, if we're you've probably seen the memes go around as well. People have clocked Netflix. They've clocked Netflix.
Remind me of the games when we were younger. I clocked Wonder Boy or Alex the Kid.
Yeah,
Remember those days?
Congratulations, you finished Netflix. Like, there's nothing on Netflix that you haven't seen. So a reminder is to fear Allah in what's being viewed on our
100%.
screens, you know. We're not saying
it.
watching TV is haram, even though some scholars might tell you that it is. But definitely if you're watching something that's not lawful, you need to be mindful of that for you and your family.
As Sheikh Jalal mentioned the other day, when you
Aywa.
watch something, just make sure it's beneficial. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he would seek refuge from ilmun la yanfa, knowledge which does not benefit. You're watching something on YouTube and Netflix, so make sure it's nurturing your mind, you're learning, you're benefiting, something you can use as a Muslim daily in your life.
Yeah, so to keep going with that point, Nidal, you need to come to terms with, okay, the quarantine is here to stay for now. Yes, perhaps, you know what, your home is not conducive for work. Yes, you may be right. It's not conducive for learning. You prefer to go to the library. Or definitely, like most, actually, you know, the funniest thing is if you had a poll, right, and you got the kids to choose, are they happy now or would they go back to school? You'll be surprised how many of them actually prefer to go back to school. Like, that's how bizarre our circumstances
That's
are,
interesting.
right? That they would actually prefer to go back to school because they find that they can't learn online. It's much more difficult because of the pressure and the added responsibility of managing their own learning on their own, right? Which some students they consider a bit of a burden, you know. But definitely, with time they'll only get better at it, and this is a testing time for everybody. Practice makes perfect, and you'll generally find that the statistics will probably change. Hopefully they don't get used to it and start demanding studying online when school comes back, you know, just to avoid coming to school. But so imagine that quarantine is here to stay. Your home may not be conducive for learning as a school student, as a university student. Even look, the parents, they know, even their homes maybe not the best place to be working, but they're forced. These are the circumstances, and they have to stay home because their kids are home. Whatever the circumstances are, they have to stay home. So the sooner we come to terms with that, I think the more productive we will be. And look, we'll make the most of creating the best setup that we could possibly can for ourselves at home. We can have a family meeting where everybody knows that, listen, during this time, we need to make sure that we watch the noise level in the house, respect everybody. You may be free, but someone else may not be. Even if the kids go outside and they're running around and they're making a big fuss, maybe someone else is at work too. And they
100%.
can, and like, if it's a beautiful day, you want to have the windows and the screen doors open. You don't want to lock yourself in to prevent noise. You will, if you have to, shut everything down to maximize any insulation like we have in here. But if you don't have that, you just want the window open, the door open. You want that fresh air. You want to feel like, you know, you're enjoying kind of the outdoors when you're indoors. But when everything's loud outside, including the neighbors' kids, and that may be your kids, you want to shut everything again. You got to be considerate. And I was frustrated the other day when I'm on a call, in a very important meeting, and this individual had to make sure everybody knew he was riding a bike from the top of the street till the end of the street. And then he turned, and then he was on the main road, and I could still hear his bike.
Ya Allah.
You know, and you're thinking, all right, man, I know you've got a bike, but like...
Relax a bit.
Yeah. People like at work in their homes, you know. But lucky for him, I think it was a Friday afternoon or something. But anyway. So... we have to be positive. We have to make the most of the current circumstances, and leadership is very important. Leadership with our own siblings, leadership with our own parents. I want to advise the older children, year 11 and 12, even year 10. If you've got younger siblings, they're going to also look to you for leadership. They're also going to look to you for inspiration. Have no doubt that a year 7 student who sees a year 10 or year 11, year 12 student dedicated in their learning, that's a good, positive role modeling. If they see you careless on TV, eating, vegging out, watching TV, how are they going to be motivated to learn? They're going to look at you and say, if they're doing this, why do I have to be responsible in my learning? And I strongly urge, on a side note, I strongly urge those year 11 students, those year 12 students, the university students, as much as possible to carry the load with their parents,
Help
especially if it's mum at home alone and dad's busy earning $1 out of the house, to play your part as an older member of the family. Then add to mum's burdens, try and alleviate some of those burdens through positive leadership, through some sort of help, some sort of assistance. Your time is very important, and you're going through a very busy time of your learning career, but like, mum would definitely appreciate any help that you can give.
Excellent advice. Jazakallah khair. Now I'm heading into the home stretch, as they say, to finish off. Ramadan, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, is 11, 12 days away, under 2 weeks away, we can say. Balancing, we always discuss this, balancing Ramadan and going to school, going to work, but now it's a bit different this year because of the restrictions. Most likely there's no tarweeh outside. There's no going to eat over your parents' house, generally speaking, or only direct siblings, I think the rules are, or direct children can go visit their parents one at a time. There goes the community iftar and the breaking your fast with your brothers and sisters, as is a tradition to most. So everything's going to be in the home. What's some advice you can give us? How can we balance between ibadah, which is the most important thing, part of fasting, prayers, Quran, dhikr, studying, working, and the rest of it at home?
No.
What's some advice to be able to balance it, basically being at home?
Tayyib, I can mention a couple of points. I still remember back in the day, a long time ago, just to give you an idea of some of the mentalities out there. Even though he was a high school kid, I said, "You're not fasting today." He goes, "No, I'm taking a break." In Ramadan, he decided he wanted to take a break from fasting in Ramadan. It was only high school, back in the day, but that's one extreme of the mentality. On the other hand, and I know some listeners who are university students may be guilty of this, that they would skip Taraweeh because they've got an important exam or they're busy in an assessment task or whatever. At the end of the day, rain, hail or shine, in any circumstance, we need to understand the value of Ramadan. We need to understand what it means to have Ramadan amongst us. Look, so much has been taken away from us, right? During this testing time, during this quarantine, stay-at-home period. But Ramadan is still here. Like, okay, we don't go to Taraweeh, but it's still, Taraweeh isn't Ramadan.
You can pray at home as well.
That's right. Like Taraweeh, it's not Ramadan. Taraweeh is part of Ramadan, but it's not Ramadan.
That's right.
The obligation of Ramadan is in the fasting of Ramadan. That's why even the smaller kids, when they're memorizing Al-Arkan al-Khamsa, Arkan al-Islam, I make sure that they understand that Ramadan is not the fifth pillar of Islam. It's not Ramadan that's the fifth pillar of Islam. The fifth pillar of Islam is not a month, a time, a day. It's the fasting in Ramadan that's the pillar of Islam.
Sawm Ramadan, as the hadith mentions.
Aywa, so the Siyam is the catch. So Mecca isn't the fifth pillar of Islam. It's the Hajj in Mecca.
Yeah, very good point.
So for us, the main core of Ramadan is the fasting. Nobody's taken that away from you. You can still fast. You can still fast now. You can fast the whole week. You can fast all of Sha'ban, right? And even after Ramadan, even if you're in quarantine, you can still fast the 6 days of Shawwal. Yes. So that's not going anywhere. That hasn't gone anywhere. We've still got that, right? But then, yes, we may have been deprived from praying Taraweeh at the masjid. And how awesome is that in the congregation with the sisterhood or the brotherhood behind our favorite imam in our favorite masjid, right? And these are all emotional motivations that definitely give us that awesome feeling in Ramadan. But if we want to bring life to this sha'ira, which is Taraweeh, originally it was Rasulullah by himself. So that's not going anywhere either. So we have to differentiate. We have to try and be as practical and as objective as we can, because a lot of the times we mix knowledge with emotion. Sometimes we take emotion as our knowledge, right? but our knowledge should influence our emotion. So we have to figure out that, you know what, fasting is here. We can still achieve taqwa by fasting during this difficult time. We can still pray the Taraweeh that we want to at home by ourselves, but maybe it's more difficult. Maybe it's not as motivating. Maybe after a week, like even we know people go to the masjid after a week, some of them stop going, and that's with others in the masjid. You know, so you kind of feel, Allah al-Musta'an, that you want to know that people are keeping it up at home. But really, the core of Ramadan is not going anywhere. The core of Ramadan will be there and it will stay there. And the thing is, what is the ruh of Ramadan? Fasting. What's another ruh of Ramadan? The Quran. None of these things have gone anywhere.
Yes.
Jannah is still achievable through your acts. Jahannam is still, you can stay away from it through your acts. The doors of Jannah are going to be open. The doors of Jahannam are still going to be locked. The shayateen, they're going to be locked. So are we. We're going to be locked in our homes as well. Right? But Sufirat shayateen, all of these things that we're used to every year, they're still around. Right? Now, going back to those who are at university or at school, it's happened. This is something that's happened outside of Ramadan, where they think that I'm very stressed. It's a very busy time for me. I've got an assessment coming up or an exam. I'm not praying Taraweeh tonight. Or I'm not going to wake up for suhoor. Or they're going to cut some sort of corner or give themselves an exemption. We have to understand that regardless of the circumstances, Ramadan is a special occasion. It's a festival that goes for 1 month a year. During quarantine or outside of quarantine.
Limited days as well.
It's limited days, regardless. And if you're sick, you can't fast. Okay, if you're pregnant, you don't have to fast. If you're too old, if you've got any of the exemptions from the Sharia, that's one thing. You know, but quarantine, I don't think is one of them. Being in quarantine, having to stay at home, isn't necessarily a restriction for you. Now you're deprived of Ramadan.
I was reading a few days ago Umtat al-Fiqh, which is a brief fiqh book, and he mentions at the start of the text of in Kitab al-Siyam what the prisoner should do.
La ilaha illallah.
Like how does he make up, or how does he estimate the month if he's got no access to anything?
Wow.
This is like 1,000 years ago, you can say, or many hundred years ago. So subhanallah, that's just saying that the fuqaha were thinking about these masail even then, like thinking how a prisoner would fast if he has no access to the outside world. Think about a medieval or an olden style jail, basically, say 500, 700, 1,000 years ago. How would he know if he's being punished and they don't want to tell him anything? Think about that, and they still estimate. So that they would talk about these issues in their books, our great ulama, rahmatullah alayhim. So what about us, where we have access to everything? Alhamdulillah, most of us are doing it pretty easy. Food is plenty, air condition, and all the other, delights of life that we have. We have to thank Allah for this and not use against ourselves. In reality, when you use the barakah that Allah has given you, you're really harming yourself.
No. And we go back to the same point, Akh Nidal, that during a special time like this is the time where we start being creative. This is the time where we start showing leadership. Not necessarily by doing something illegal. I don't care anymore, I'm going to go to the masjid and, I'm going to have a big jama'ah in my house. I'm going to turn it into a masjid, and all of a sudden the neighbors see all these people flocking to your house, into your garage. There's 50 people every night, and all of a sudden there's people out on the road in the driveway.
And the police will come.
Channel
9 and 7 and Sky News, and they'll be make a story out of it for you.
You're copping a big fat fine. Be creative within yourself, within your family. And this, subhanAllah, this is coming a blessing of having a big family. And how awesome would it be within your nuclear family, especially if you have your parents living with you, you have your tarawih every night.
Yeah.
And the family know, khalas, every night, 7:30, everybody get ready, there's tarawih, right? You've dedicated the place, you've dedicated, you've gotten the mats ready, whether it's, whether you're going to use towels, whether you're going to use bed sheets or whatever it is, make the floor ready. That this is where we're praying every night in Ramadan.
Tomorrow, not on Albayan Live, we have our dear Sheikh Kamal, Abu Maryam, and inshallah one of the questions we are going to pose to him is Taraweeh at home. You know, prayers at home. You know, what should a Muslim do nightly? And that's one of the questions we have prepared for him, as you've just mentioned, to pray Tarawih at home.
No, and Akh Nidal, like, there's no qualification of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he promised that every night, Lillahi utaqa'a minan nar. Every night Allah saves people and writes that this person is not going to the hellfire. This person, it's haram for the hellfire to burn this person. Even during quarantine, that is the case every single night in Ramadan and in the coming Ramadan as well. Man sama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban. And eventually we're going to be here these hadith again and again. Man qama Ramadan imanan wa ihtisaban. Quarantine doesn't change any of that. So if you're fixated and you're going to make sure as a personal challenge to make sure you pray Tarawih every night at home with your family, you will earn that reward. Man qama Ramadan. Right? And also with the fasting, that's not going anywhere. But then, and this is a blessing from our deen, Akh Nidal. There will be people earning the full reward of Tarawih in the masjid with their favorite imam and their favorite Quran in complete khushu' every night without leaving their homes. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not deprive those who would constantly do that year in, year out, whether it's the sunnah, whether it's the i'tikaf, whether it's the tarawih, whether it's the umrah in Ramadan. Allah knows that if Ramadan was open, the message was open, this person would do what they've always been doing. So Allah will give them the reward. So then the heartbreaking fact is that person who would always skip tarawih and didn't find it necessary, just Ramadan doesn't make any difference to him.
Nothing
he never used to go anyway. For the one who never even thought of going to Umrah in Ramadan, never even thought of doing i'tikaf, never thought of qiyam, to them it's all the same. So there would be people in this Ramadan earning the full reward, right? As if the masajid were full. The masajid will be full of people earning the reward. Like all in the previous years, those consistent, regular brothers and sisters, while the masjid is actually in lockdown and shut and the lights are off and there's nobody in there. Because they still consistently do it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, considering the current circumstances, He won't deprive them of that reward. So maybe this is also a lesson for us, that if we keep up a good habit, a good positive habit of worship, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he promises us that if something comes between us and continuing that habit, travel or marad or whatever the case is, Allah will continue to give us that reward, knowing that if we were completely healthy and able, we would continue that routine, but just something got in the way.
Barakallah fiqh, Ustaz Muhammad. Any final advice, final comments?
Look, I hope, inshallah, one of the beautiful things that I love hearing from Sheikh Jamil is his optimism, right? And I hope that I can give as much optimism to our brothers and sisters as possible through this show, to be optimistic, to be positive,
yes,
to be creative, to show leadership. And I'll tell you what, Akhi Nidal, because these circumstances are unprecedented, there's a great opportunity for brothers and sisters to be pioneers, right? To start a sunnah, to start a good sunnah. No one's been in this situation before. So it's an opportunity. Think of a good, positive sunnah and start a sunnah, right, that people will follow afterwards, and you give them as a reference, as an example, during this time where everybody's looking left, right, and center and thinking, what do we do now? What do we do? What do we do in this case? What do we do in that situation? How do we do this now? How do we do that now? Some people put their hands in their faces and say, we're doomed, everything's finished, everything's over, everything's ruined, our lives are upside down, and they just put themselves in a rut. Right, some people are in complete denial of everything, and they consider that nothing's happened, and everyone's overdoing it, and there's no such thing, But as Sheikh Nabil Awidi, Hafidhahullah, in a very short clip on YouTube, he said people are three, this extreme and this extreme, but you're in the middle, right? Don't be either extreme. Like just live your life, right? But look at take the advice also, but don't completely have a complete meltdown and completely stop functioning, stop living because you think, khalas, all the world's going to hell in a handbasket. So I want to, inshallah, I don't look, Akh Nidal, I don't pretend to know people's lifestyles. This is a very, very difficult time. If people have lost their jobs, if their businesses have gone from 100% to 10%, you know, if households now, if their income's been absolutely destroyed, I can't even imagine what their lifestyle is like, and I can't pretend to tell these people, oh, come on, you know, lift yourself up and be positive, because this has had devastating effects on people. And we've seen some of the videos. You've seen that video of, even though people question the credibility of that video that's come out of New York, of the brothers in the morgue, and they're in every room, and there's, I don't know how many, there's 30 of them or 50 of them or 80 of them all over the place in a morgue for Muslims in New York. There's another video of like 10 people at once being buried in the UK. One of the brothers, Jazakallah Khair, yani he filmed it, and it's not like a mass grave, but it's like a trench, right? And that's what the authorities said, that's how you're going to bury them. So this is real. It's got real devastating effects on people, you know. But nonetheless, yani, we can't succumb to fear. We can't succumb to depression. We can't give in to negative sentiments. I don't like watching the news. It's just depressing. It's just one bad thing after another.
It's a lot of fear-mongering as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You finish watching the news, you think, khalas, tomorrow's the day of judgment, we're all going to die and go to hell. You know? So...
That sells.
Absolutely. You know, so just as much as you can, try and be optimistic for your children. Try and be optimistic for your brothers and sisters. Try and be optimistic, inshaAllah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take us out of this.
You remind me of the ayah, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ.
No.
Ya subhanallah. Be patient. No. Anticipate the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be content with the decree of Allah. It is testing, but that's how a Muslim faces calamities with you know, it's probably now, maybe it's a sunnah that we should all bring back, as you said, to, you know, reinvent a sunnah, or to start spreading a sunnah that may be abandoned, and that is the sunnah of being positive.
No.
Look at the bright side and how we can actually benefit ourselves. And like you think about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he says, whoever Allah wants good for, He gives him tests and trials.
No.
That is amazing hadith. You think that, you know, like when you give your child medicine, it may be bitter, but in the end it's better for him.
No.
Because it can inshallah make him better. Like tests and trials, same thing.
And تفاءلوا بالخير تجدوه.
That's it.
Is that a hadith or is that a qawl?
I don't know. But we know the Prophet ﷺ used to love, you know, optimism in all things. Even if someone had a bad name, a name with a meaning which is not praiseworthy in Islam, he would change their name.
نعم وبشروا ولا تنفروا.
That's it.
You know, so inshallah, I hope the message is that regardless of everything, and we looked at small details and big general details, just inshallah, be patient, be positive, and we will get through this bi'idhnillah. We will get through it bi'idhnillah.
Jazakallah khair, Ustaz Muhammad. Once again, it's a pleasure and honor to have you with us. We have a lot of shows throughout the week coming up on Albayan. Just tomorrow, Tuesday, we have our dear beloved Sheikh from 5 p.m. Ma'al Quran, a new program in Arabic, where he's going through the tafsir of Surah Al-Isra. Our dear beloved Sheikh Khalid Isa at 5 p.m. Tomorrow night, we also have at 7 p.m. our Sheikh Muhammad Dua. He's continuing with his explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed from Sahih al-Bukhari. And then at 8 p.m. we have Sheikh Kamal, who will be our guest tomorrow night on Albayan Live. We will be speaking about how to approach Ramadan and also QA, so you can have your questions ready. You can call in or leave them on our Facebook page. So this is one of the positives that, alhamdulillah, there is a lot of da'wah. It's all online or through Albayan Radio, but continue learning, continue bettering yourself. And on Wednesday night, you mentioned Sheikh Jamil. He'll be back with us on Albayan Live Wednesday night for Albayan Live at 8 p.m. as well. So spread the word, my dear brothers and sisters. Make the most of your situation. Continue learning, because knowledge, wallahi, it changes your life. It gives you certainty when things are quite uncertain, when things are quite unpredictable. And if you fix your relationship with Allah, Allah will fix everything else for you. Once again, Ustaz Muhammad, barakallah feek, jazakallah khair. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
And I also want to say a special jazakillahu khairan to my wife Suad for the help that she provided in putting together these notes. She doesn't know it, but just
excellent. Beautiful. That's excellent.
No.
We thank her for her contribution to tonight's program as well. Barakallah feek. And we'd like to thank all our viewers on Facebook and on our apps. Barakallah feekum. And until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Albayan Radio, the voice of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah.